All right, we'd like to welcome Torah Anytime, the camera over here, right? So if you guys ever miss a class, which you shouldn't, you could always find it on Torah Anytime whenever it is uploaded. So we'll hopefully be doing the third class on reincarnation today, and it's going to be a lot of interesting, variety of topics that we're going to squeeze in today. We're going to speak about women, how women are involved in reincarnation. We'll speak about what certain sins you come back as certain animals or certain things or certain different types of, because reincarnation you don't only come back as humans. You could come back as an animal, a plant, a rock. So we'll speak about what the Arizal says in certain things like that, and then we'll throw in a bunch of nice stories that's going to keep you well entertained, hopefully, right? But more importantly, bring you closer to God. So that's the ultimate purpose of it. Okay, so. First of all, to give a little recap of what we're speaking about, a soul. It says in the pasuk in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, right? V'yitza Hashem Elokim es Adam v'afar min Adama v'yipach ba'afar nishmat chaim, which means is that when God created the human being, He put something in him, and that's like the soul went in through the nostrils, right? And what really means is what happens, it's like when He blew it, right? When you blow out something, what are you really doing? You're taking something from inside and you're taking out, right? Your ear is inside, you take a deep breath in, and then you blow out all the air. It means that you're taking away something from inside and you're putting it on the outside, right? What happens is when God created the human being, the Adam, the first human, He basically inserted from Him into us, which means is He blew in to us a soul, which means is that we come from a piece of God. Right, so every soul is a part of God. Not like everyone's like, well, it's my body, it's my soul. No. You don't own anything, right? Everything is on a loan, right? It's not even a lease. It's like a rental, right? You're renting and at the end of the day, if you have damages, you have to pay for it, right? If you neglect it, or if you when I was in Israel, I had to rent. Baruch Hashem, I have 3 kids, right? And I had my kids tend to eat in the car sometimes, and so when I returned the rental car. They were I didn't even realize it because we took out the baby seat and there was like bonbon, like snacks. There was like bags of full, not in bags, but bags amount full all over the place, right? And they're like, listen, Israelis, listen, Habibi, you have to pay for this extra, And I'm, so then I'm, put on my Israeli and be like, come on, what you say, So we're negotiating back and forth, and thank God they didn't charge me extra. But if you come back, you bring a dirty car, you bring it's the damaged car. You got to pay for it if it's damaged. So the same thing is with the soul. A soul is we are part of God. When God comes and collects it back, He'll be like, wait a minute, I gave you a nice clean white soul. And I don't even see a white speck on this thing. Right? It's so filthy. And then that's when it's going to come to the judgment. So now, you ever wonder if whoever's familiar with the way the Torah begins, in the history of the Torah, the beginning, it's more like there are people that lived hundreds and hundreds of years. Right? You have Adam, he lived over 900 years. You have so many people that lived so many hundreds of years. Nowadays, someone lives over 100 and what's the oldest man? 111, 115, 116 or something like that. I don't know where we're holding. Right? That's considered, back then it was a young little child. Compared to you, people would get married at 100. Like, I'm just starting out life. What are you talking about? So the question is why is it back then they started so, they had such a long lifespan, and now we have such a small lifespan? And the answer is because we have certain missions in life, right? Now, if someone has a large mission, he needs more time to accomplish it. So what happened was in the beginning of the creation, God said, okay, listen, you guys, you're going to take like 500 missions, whatever. Let's wrap this up. Come on, let's do this, because at the end of the day, the end goal is Olam Haba, right? The world to come. So He says, come on, we'll do it quick. Here's a lot of missions, right? So you have 500 years, 600 years, 700 years, so you have a lot of missions that you could accomplish, and you could, wrap up your whatever that you need to do. But the problem was that people weren't really, listening to God. They weren't doing all their missions. So then they had to, start cutting back slowly. Okay, to give you an example, is imagine if you have something really heavy, a box full of heavy books that you need to carry. Right? And you can't pick it up, you can't carry it, it's very difficult for you. So what you do is you take a few books at a time and you carry it to the next place. You take a few books at a time, you carry it to the next place, and that's much easier. The same idea is with souls. If you have a large mission, it's very heavy, it's very hard, you have a lot of work to do, and it's hard to move it from place to place. So God said, okay, listen, just take 2 books, bring it to there. Right? That's all I'm asking you. And that's what so now we're on the stage that we are, our lives, Baruch Hashem, as you see, is getting a little bit longer than it used to be. So, it's for a reason, not for just like, hey, yeah, enjoy retirement, right? And here's for your 401k. No, it's for a purpose that we're here for longer. So the idea is that now we have less of a mission, right? which is all the more problematic if we don't listen to God. You know, like if you come and you'll say, okay, listen, I'll pay you $100,000. Just take these tables and move it to that side. You know, every night at 9 p.m. And you come in and you look at it and be like, whatever, Snapchat, or whatever now is going on, Facebook, and you scroll your status, right? And the guy doesn't, you know, there's a video camera, they check after a month, they're paying you, you know, whatever your monthly salary, and they come and be like, all I asked you to do is move it over here. There's not even a purpose for it. I just wanted it so I could give you money in a way. And you come and you'll be like, oh, well, whatever, I was too lazy. You know, that is going to be a lot more difficult as if, so let's say somebody is required to, you know, write 10,000 papers on whatever that they have to do for research, and, you know, they slack off on something. Which means is the smaller the job and the larger the payment, the more you know, responsibility that you have. Make sense? Okay. So there is okay. So by the way, you're going to see me flipping a lot of pages. I'm going to be skipping a little bit of stuff today. So there is 3 types of souls. Right? There's 3 types of soul. There's we all originally come from Adam HaRishon, right? The first human being. He came sort of to explain it. Well, there's actually no easy way to explain it. But imagine one central soul that, like a puzzle, you break it up into thousands and thousands of pieces, right? And each one gets a little piece of the soul. A little piece, it's called a spark, a nitzutz, right? So we are all pieces of Adam. However, that's one type of category, right? We're all pieces of Adam. There's another type that's a new soul, completely like never been here before, not connected with Adam, and this soul is very rare to come. These are the people that accomplish a lot in their lifetime. They become like big, you know, like leaders and big, you know, those types of souls have a lot of power because they weren't affected by the sin that Adam did. Now, so let's keep it as that category 1. And then in the second category, what I said, where it comes from Adam, you could split it into 2. Number 1 is people that were affected by the sin, which means there are certain souls that are more affected by the sin than the others. Those souls have a harder time to accomplish things in life. Their tests are harder. There's a lot more to, you know, that they need to do. Then there are the souls that were not so affected by the sin. Those souls have an easier life. Their stuff comes more natural, and they, you know, I'll give you an example. There are certain people that you could scream at, and it's not the sole reason, but there are certain people that, let's say they're coming back to Baal Tshuva, starting to become religious. There's one type of person that you could tell them like 1 or 2 things, and they'll be like, what? I never knew that, that's crazy. And he becomes religious 100%, very quickly, no problem. Then there's another person that you could go and you could scream at them from today until tomorrow about Shabbat, about Tefillin, about all these things, about modesty, all these things, and they'll be like, well, I know you're right, but, you know, and then like ADD kicks in and they're like, well, butterflies, you know, and then there's like whatever, and they cannot change, right? It depends on the level of the soul, obviously. Okay, so there's also something else that's the roots of a soul. You ever realize that you ever, you know, let's say you meet somebody new and you click right away. You're like, this is going to be my new, what is it, BFF, right? My new best, what's BFF? It shouldn't just be BF, best friend, no? Oh, whatever, okay. Oh, forever, okay. Okay, just make sure you don't do it in blood oath or whatever it is, right? So you say, okay, this is going to be my new best friend. Right? You could sometimes see that, and then there's another person that walks in the room, and you're like, get me away from this person right now. I can't stand it. Right? So I see nodding heads. I don't know if there's a good thing or a bad thing, but you should have nodded your heads when you said, oh yeah, my best friend part. But the idea is you're all familiar with it, right? There are certain things. Why is it that you can never see a person before and suddenly you become connected? Instant connection. You guys click, everything works well. And on the other hand, you're like, I can't stand. This person could be the sweetest person, right? But you get so like, whatever, I can't deal with you right now. I have to, you know, whatever it is. So yeah, go walk in. We're not going to scare you. I won't, hopefully. Okay, so welcome. So the idea is it depends where the root of the souls are. There are certain roots of souls that are, I'll give you an example. Let's say a tree has many roots, right? And then there's another tree that also has many roots, right? So if you come from the same root, you're very connected. So the souls, being that they come from different parts of Adam, if you find somebody that's very close to you, where you originated from, your soul, you get very close. So you click. That everything works very smoothly, and you're very connected, and everything works very well. However, if somebody's like very far away and very distant, and you're like, what, you know, like you don't see it, but inside your soul, your subconscious are like, whatever. We don't really, you know, we're from 2 different parts of the universe. So that is sometimes why this is the roots of the soul. There's also that. You know, people have to come for a reason they're coming down here, right? It's not just like, hey, why don't you try 100 years? Yeah, why don't you try it out? You know, test drive. You know, there's a reason why we're here, right? So you know, I'll give you an example. It's an amazing story I heard from Rabbi Yehoshua Zitron about, well, actually quite some time ago. So it's some stories, you hear it and you don't forget it. I don't know why this story, I heard it and I just didn't forget it, like to the details also. So let's call we'll make up names. We're not going to use the real names. So there was once two people. Let's call them, Sam and Max. I used those names in my last night class. Why not? You double up, right? So this is a true story, but it's not. Those are not the real names. Sam and Max. Sam and Max were very close buddies. They were very close. Everything was working well for them while they were learning in yeshiva. They were chavutas, and everything was going excellent. They were best, BFFs, right? Could you say that for boys? Yeah. Okay, good. So I don't know the rules. Okay. Sometimes I get punished for certain things that I say. Because the problem is that I don't usually have the filter that most people do. I just say things, right? So works good and works bad. Whatever, I'll live with it. So in any case, so they were best friends, and they after a while, when they're getting older, they get married, and they said, okay, listen, it's time for us to go to business. And they each went in their own ways, and they each went into separate businesses. Now Sam was very successful. He went into business, and he just made money. Just kept on crawling in, right? Flying in, I should rather say. Max wasn't so successful. So, after a few years, Max couldn't make the ends meet. Sam is rolling in it. He goes over to his best friend. He says, listen, buddy. He says, I've been trying a business. It's been really hard for me. Can you do me a favor? Can you spot me one? Can you maybe help me start up a business or, help me invest or something like that? So, Sam's like, for sure. I forgot which one's who. All right, that's bad. Sam was the rich one. Max was the poor one. Just so I'm clarified. Okay? Sam was the rich one. So he goes to Max, sure, not a problem. He says, why don't you, and he says, you mean so much to me. He wrote him a check for half his wealth. Half his wealth I'm giving it to you, you go start your business. And he goes and Max goes and he starts his business and he becomes extremely successful. Meanwhile, a few years pass by and Sam, the one who originally had the money, lost all his money. And he came and he goes over to Max and he tells Max and he says, listen, can you help me? Remember, what I did for you. I don't want to rub it in your face, but I'm in a very tough situation. Can you please help me? So Max, the one who's rich now said, listen, I would love to, but who are you? And the guy's like, what do you mean, who am I? He says, we were best friends. And I'm sorry, I have no idea who you are. And he was like, are you serious? He's like, what are you talking? I gave you half my money. He says, listen, security, he says, I don't know what's going on with this lunatic over here. Please remove him from my premises. And they kick him off. And, the poor one now, Sam's he's like, what God, how is that even possible? He said, we were best friends. How did he just, do that? And he says, you know what? Whatever. He put it away from his, back of his mind. He says, there must be a reason. And he pushed it out. Eventually he comes and a few years go by, the wheels turn again. The one who kicked him out of his house now lost all his money. The one who had original money, right, now became wealthy again. So now this poor one goes back to his friend, to his friend, and he says, listen, he says, I feel terrible what I did to you. I can't understand. I kicked you out when I needed, when you came and you needed the most, and you did it to me. And he's like, please forgive me. I apologize. And, so his friend now who's wealthy says, you know what, it's fine. I'm sure you were in a bad situation. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I forgive you. Then he says, but, there's another reason why I'm here. And he's like, sure, my friend, please come in, sit down. And he says, tables have turned on me, and I lost everything. And I feel really embarrassed, especially after what I did to you, but maybe you could help me out like you once did before. So the guy thought for a second, and he says, absolutely. He's like, you're like a brother to me? Not a problem. Wrote out again half his wealth to this friend, right? Then he goes, he gives him this money, and then eventually, tables once again turn. And once again, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the same exact thing happened. The rich one went back to the one who didn't have money and says, hey, you please help me? And the one who had now the money, he's like, I remember for you from somewhere. He's like, oh yeah, you came to me many years ago screaming for money. He's like, get him out of here. Kicked him right back out, right? And then the way that it happened is that he died poor, and the one who was originally poor died, wealthy. So they came back to heaven, and it was time for them to get judged. Now, we're going to pause the story right there, and then we're going to go to a different story, and then we're going to combine the two. So stay with me. There was once somebody that was very wealthy. And he came and, someone came to his door knocking for food. It was a very poor man, obviously hasn't eaten in days, and it was starving. And he goes to this person and says, please, alms for the poor. Can you please, spare some bread, spare some food, spare some money maybe? And the guy was in a very big business deal, and he was like, yeah, sure, one second. And then he got back into his business deal and completely forgot about it. The guy knocked again, and he said, listen, I don't have time right now. I'm there, please come back later. What happened was, a few hours later, this poor person died from starvation. It was on his last breath, and he died. When he got back to the rich man felt really bad. So he went over to this big Kabbalist rabbi, and he says, listen, I really feel bad. I feel like it was my fault. And, he tells him everything that happened. And the rabbi is looking there for a second, and he starts shaking his head, and then he closes his eyes, and he's like, you have no idea. You think you have no idea what just happened. And he tells him the story of this Max and Sam that I just told you. And then he says, what happened was, he says that Max, and then he continues the story. What happened was Max and Sam, when they got up to heaven, so the one who had the original money kept on giving money to his friend. They brought them both into judgment. And they said, listen, this guy is obviously getting punished. Your friend gave you twice half his wealth, right? And you didn't give him at all when he needed it the most. And his friend who had money says, oh, don't worry, I forgive him. It's fine, don't worry about it. And they said, no, you can't forgive up here. You can forgive down there. Up here, you can't forgive. So they said, what's the deal? What are we supposed to do? So he said, you have two options. He says, they told this to the one who refused to give money to his friend. He says, if your friend allows it, you could both go down to this world one more time and try to fix it, right? If your friend does not want to come down to this world, which rightfully so, says you're going to go to hell and you're going to pay for it over there. So they were looking back and forth, and he was like, he's like, I can't go to hell, please, I can't do that. So his friend who gave him his money twice said, you know what? He's like a brother to me. Even though what he did I know was wrong, I'll go back down in this world for him. And they said, okay, fine, you could go back down, but your friend who basically didn't give you money when you're supposed to, he's going to be wealthy his whole life. You are going to be poor, and there's going to be one time where you guys are going to meet. And in order to fix this whole situation, he has to give you money. That's it. And then the whole thing is fixed. Obviously a sizable amount. So he said fine. They both, they agreed with it. There's no shaking hands, but they both, agreed with it over there in the next world, and they came down to this world. The rabbi opens his eyes and looks at this wealthy man, and he says, "You are the guy that screwed the other guy over twice. That poor person that came to you was your friend. The whole purpose that you came down to this world was to give him charity." He says, and you messed it all up. As you messed that one purpose that you came for this world, you completely messed it up. And the guy's like turning white, he's fainting, he's like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" I was like, I thought this is a lot worse than just killing one person, right? This is messing up with the whole system of things. So he's like, he told the rabbi, what am I supposed to do? So the rabbi said, listen, at this point what you could do is support the widow and her kids for the rest of their life, give them a sizable amount, and that's what he did. But you look over here, sometimes people come to this world for one thing. And imagine how it is if you mess it up on that one thing, right? Let's say imagine someone comes back for modesty. I was speaking to the woman, I might as well say. Imagine it's a difference of, the modesty, let's say for the skirt length, right? It's below the knees, right? But nowadays there's a very big craze of having it just right above the knees, right? Just where the Satan doesn't want to. Imagine that you had to come back to this world for 2 inches of extra skirt. Sometimes it's even there. Sometimes they just roll it up. And how much would a person kick himself? For that? There was absolutely nothing that I possibly would have gained from that. People don't know what's their mission in this world. There is a mission that you're here. You messed up before, and we're all back here for a reason, right? So if we're back here for a reason, we have to be very careful that everything that we're going to do, that sin or that mitzvah, we have to think maybe this is the reason that I'm here. If a person has that mentality, their life is going to be very different. Somebody comes over to you for charity, you're not going to push them away. Or, come on, you smell. Please go. Please leave. You'd be like, wait, maybe this one. And you'll do everything to the A. Everything. You'll be like the most righteous person in the entire world. A person has to think with that mentality, right? Because you never know what the reason. It might be something that you may seem insignificant, but it really means a lot more than it is.
Where do you draw the line not to be taken advantage of?
For charity?
For I don't know, anything.
So taking advantage is only between man to man. Between you and God, there's no taking advantage. So, example, being modesty, there's no the Torah is taking advantage of me. I'm walking around with a blanket. It's.
But you said skirt. What about sleeves? 2 inches.
The way that it works is very simple. It's below the thing.
You mentioned the skirt, so sleeves would be okay? Or?
No. So it's a good thing that you said that. Thank you. So that people shouldn't say, well, a rabbi just said the skirt, so it's okay for sleeveless from now on, and with a crop or whatever. So absolutely not. No, the rule is like this. It has to be covered over here. By the collarbone, it has to be past the knees, and it has to be below the elbows, right?
Is it just past the knees, or 6 inches past the knees?
As long as when you're sitting, it's covering your knees, right? There are many girls, they sit, and every 2 seconds they're trying to stretch the fabric that, maybe if I, So it has to be something that it goes below the knees, when you're sitting down, especially when you're walking.
Did you also give lecture on dreams?
I did, but we didn't start it. We're going to do that over here, God willing, maybe next week actually. We'll start over here. Yeah.
Oh, you give that
yeah.
as well?
Yeah. So yeah. So
when does it start here?
8 p.m. 8 p.m. Thursday nights. They could give you the information afterwards. There's some sort of.
Same time. It's a second and
Yeah.
week already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So okay, so we're clear so far? Good. Okay. So the rule is that somebody not only has to come back to fix a sin, they also have, if they didn't do a mitzvah properly, they have to come back to fix it. Which means is, let's say, for example, a man is easier to explain in this. Let's say a man did not put on tefillin, right? He didn't wrap the tefillin in the morning. So he has to come back, and his purpose in life is to do that. And sometimes you see men have a very easy time. They'll keep Shabbat, they'll do everything, but one thing that's hard for them is tefillin. This is the hardest thing for them. It's like, what is it? You could do it in 30 seconds. If you're really it's not the right way, but you shouldn't do it that way, but you could, technically, right? But they can't do it. They keep on forgetting, they push it off, they do that. They don't know that, so this is the rule. You have to go on both ends of the spectrum. Like, how do you know what your purpose of you being here for? So whatever is the hardest for you, you should know that that's one big reason. And for whatever is also, you're very inclined to do it. You're like, oh, I love this. I love doing chesed. I love doing certain things. I love making people happy. I love doing certain things. You know that the opposite ends of the spectrum, those are what you have to fix. Right? Depending on what.
You have to stop doing chesed, or?
No, start doing chesed.
Oh,
if
you're a person that does it.
Yeah. If you're something that you're inclined to do it. You should always do chesed, but there's some people that go above and beyond. Right? I know people that they'll spend all night in like nursing homes and hospitals helping with patients, and then they'll go the next day to work, and they're like, I'm like, how do you do that? And they're like, no, I love it. I live for this. So there are certain people that they're inclined to certain things, and there's certain people, so that you should do. And the other end is also as if you're like, oh, modesty is impossible. That's never going to happen. Right? That's what you know that you have to fix. Right? That's how you know that that's what you have to do. Okay. So good. I'm assuming silence for yes. Okay. So the general rule is that, let's say if somebody comes back for a sin that they messed up, it's going to be very difficult for them to resist that sin. So for whatever reason it is, let's say somebody comes back because the big sin that they did is they ate non-kosher food, right? So in this world, when they're alive now, they're going to have such a craving for non-kosher food. It's going to be so hard for them to resist it, right? It's going to be, and they have to fight against that. And the same rule is also, it's like, it's like you failed the mission, so like restart the game, try playing again, right? But you start playing a game, you're going to start with the same level. So you basically start off where you messed off at. So that's why you could see, remember we spoke about like, little kids. Some little kids are like, have serious anger issues. You could tell, like some like you're like, oh, dude, like the Satan is in you or something. I don't know, go away, But there's some kids that are just the sweetest kid in the entire world. They could come from like a broken home, but they're like, giving out their snacks, and they're like scrawny, they're like starving, but they're like giving everybody out all the food. They're like the cutest kids. It depends on where you come from. This kid in his previous life was a very big angry person, so he has to come to fix that. That's what you always see when you see a little baby. You're like, oh, it's so cute. Look at the mushy cheeks. You pinch it, it's so cute at me. But you don't realize that this could be a 100-year-old man that's sitting in front of you. It's very hard to think of it like that.
Tell what you were in your past life.
How is it possible to if you really want to figure out?
Yeah.
There is something in science called regression therapy, where they hypnotize you to a previous life. But I wouldn't recommend that. But you could usually just be safe with the way I just told you, is whatever's hard for you, that's what you have to fix. There's a reason why we don't remember things, right? Some people do. I have to tell you this. I'll remember it. Somebody sent me a text. I can't say, who it was, but because I don't want it to come back, I didn't even ask them if I could say it. So therefore, I have to, this couple has a 4-year-old daughter, right? And the mother was looking out on Amazon for pacifiers because they have another baby. So the little girl says, Mommy, can you buy me a pacifier too? And they're like, no, you're 4 years old. You don't need a pacifier. So she's like, so how about when I die and then I come back as a baby again? Can you get it for me then? Right? A 4-year-old girl said that to that, right? And I'm like, if someone doesn't believe in reincarnation, it's screaming at you right over here. What did this little girl said? It was lucky I wasn't there because I would have drilled her. I'm like, oh, what do you mean by that? How does that make you feel? Where's the pen? Tell me more, little girl. So you don't get those people a lot. You don't get those people a lot that I can remember. But there's a reason. The people that it's crazy, but it's true. As crazy as it is. Okay, so there's sometimes that people come back and they just have to fix, let's say, one mitzvah. And there's an interesting story with the Baal Shem Tov that there was once he was once driving, and he tells off his wagon driver. He says, he takes him off like some weird rounded off path, and he takes him to the end over there, and he says, and they go to this little inn, and at the edge of town, and they go into this inn, and they see in this inn there's the innkeeper with the husband and the wife were taking care of the inn, and then in the corner they had like a mentally disabled child that was playing with his whatever. It was an older child, but their developmental level is a lot lower. So the Baal Shem Tov looks around, sees the child, and he says. And he tells the innkeeper, maybe you have some sort of like a bird that we could eat for a kosher bird, obviously, that we could eat. So the innkeeper said, we have it, but we need to slaughter it. We need to, So the rabbi said, listen, I could slaughter. I know how to slaughter, so we'll slaughter and we'll eat it. He slaughters it, and then he looks inside and says, there's a question over here. Like, is it kosher or is it not, right? Because if you slaughter something, it's not necessarily always, you have to look how it was done and what's inside. There's a lot of rules and into this. So he's looking inside. Is it not? Suddenly, the mentally disabled kid gets up from where he was playing, puts down his little toys that he was playing, walks over to this chicken, and with the clear, like all of a sudden he became like so clear. He's looking at it like he really knows what he's talking about. He's looking at it back and forth, and after a few minutes, with like you could tell, sometimes a person, like for example, when someone's drunk, right? You can see that in their eyes, right? They're like rolling all over the place, and God forbid we can't compare that to mentally disabled kids, but sometimes you see that you could tell without even speaking to them yet that their mind is not all there. But they saw by his face, he was all there. Like it was like scary how sharp he was. He's looking back and forth. He's saying a few things, and then he's like, it's kosher. And like in complete making sense. And he says it's kosher, and then he went down, he fell down and passed away. So the parents run over. It's like, oh my God, what's going on? And they tried to resuscitate him, tried to bring him back, and it wasn't doing it. So they go to the rabbi and says, what's going on? What happened over here? So the rabbi says, your son had a very holy soul, and in a previous life he was a very big rabbi. And one time somebody came over to him with a question of a chicken, and he said that it was not good when it was really good. He had to come back to this world to fix it, and that's what he just did. He said something that was good, and he saw that it was good, and he came back good. He fixed it. Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Time to go home, right? So there's many times you see these people are very it's people that have no mentally disabled. These are souls that have very, very high souls. These are not regular people. These are people there are big rabbis that used to stand up for people, would walk in with these types of souls. Because he's like, these are they don't have free will. If they don't have free will, that means that they're on a much higher level than everyone feels bad for them. Really, you should look up to them. They're a lot ahead. What?
What about the guys?
The guys, the non-Jews also. They have a different level. They're non-Jews also go to heaven.
No, I'm saying is that the same thing when you look at them
Yeah. They have a reason. They're exactly.
They're also very righteous.
Most likely, yeah. You can't say it as a blanket statement because sometimes it comes as a punishment, depending on certain things, right? But generally speaking, yeah, they're more righteous, right? The easiest way to understand it is they don't have free will. They don't get punished for doing things that they're not. They don't understand. Right, so if you don't understand, you can't. That's why a little baby that's playing, sees a toy and it's on Shabbat and he starts playing with it and it's remote control or something, you should say, try to take it away from him, but he's not going to get punished for that. He doesn't know any better, right? As opposed to somebody who's 25-year-old, still living at home. Some people will say he doesn't know any better, but he really does know better, right? And he's making his own problems. So let's move on. So now there are also, people that not only do they have to come back for, let's say, doing mitzvah, it's also for learning Torah. If, let's say, a person has to learn Torah, people think, okay, I'll listen to a lecture on the way to work. He can consider himself a big tzaddik. Say, who wants a blessing? Come. I just heard it for an hour. I spaced out because I was, looking at everywhere else I was going to the street, but I'm a righteous person. People have to understand that as a man, and you guys know, whoever's not married, or, you're looking for a guy, you want to look for a guy who's close to God, who's close to learning Torah. Not somebody who's playing video games while he's 32. That's a big problem, right? If you have a guy that's sitting there, say, go learn Torah. Kick him out. Women have a lot of power, by the way. Oh, you guys know, what am I saying? Okay, so now there's the way it works, and we spoke about this by soulmate. Husband and wife originally have one soul. And what happens is that the soul splits, and part of it goes to the man, part of it goes to the woman, and they live their own lives until they get married. Now what happens is, when they get married, there is, let's picture it like this. When a person, this is an easy way to understand it. You're trying to collect water in here, right? So you put it under the faucet and you turn it on. Now, you'll try to aim it inside, but let's say it's a lot of water falling, so whatever falls in is what you're going to get. Now imagine if it was this cup in the faucet. You see the surface area on the higher, you're going to be able to fill this up a lot quicker than this, right? Because it's double, it's whatever, it's 10 times, whatever, it's 5 times the size of the opening over here. What happens is that God sends us blessings from up above. He says when you're a single person, you have like this, you have, and it comes over here. What happens is when you get married, you reunite, you connect this soul together, and you have a lot more blessing that is able to come. Obviously, you have to do it right. You have to keep, talat mishpacha. You have to, go to the mikveh. You have to be modest, and the person has to, obviously, we're talking about those type of people. So now, when a woman and a man have different mitzvot. So a woman say it's not fair. How am I supposed? The highest reward for mitzvot is for learning Torah, right? Which is, by the way, you guys are now, you're good, you're able to come. It's an amazing thing. But let's say, you eventually get married, you're going to have kids. It's hard for you to get out and learn Torah, right? It's hard, but maybe you're going to listen to it on the classes or whatever it is. So you say, it's not fair. He says, I have to sit here at home. My husband gets to go learn Torah. He's going to get all the reward. And the answer is, it doesn't go that way. He says, you guys share. You get the reward when he learns Torah. So now you have an inside reason to go kick him out. It's easy for you. Hey, why don't you go learn? Let me play some games, while you racking up mitzvot while he's going and sweating in the Beit Midrash and learning, right? It's a win-win situation, right? And but on the other hand, he doesn't have a mitzvah of modesty, so he gets, a woman gets unbelievable reward for modesty, one of the highest, right? The way that the blessing comes into the home is due to the modesty of woman, which is crazy. So he wants, like, I'm not fair. He'll walk around with the 1980s, with the poofy things now, no problem, right? So he says, not fair, I don't get that reward. And the answer is you guys share it together. That's why you have to work together, not against each other. You have to be very careful in that manner. Sometimes it'll be like, oh, why don't you go learn Torah? Oh, why don't you dress more modestly? Right? That's not going to help anybody. Right? You have to work together and be like, okay, listen, let's work together. Let's gain to the next, not like a partnership, because you're not a partnership, but as something that you're building together. There's also something very important to understand is that there are certain people that you could get. Let's say you're dating, right? And then you become, let's say, attracted to the guy, or for the guy for the girl, and it goes out for a few days and then it doesn't work out. And so what happens is that there's something called fake soulmates, which is something could happen over there, right? Fake soulmates, which means soulmates that's not really your soulmate, right? Now this is where people have to be very careful and not marry somebody who's a fake soulmate. The biggest problem where this comes is when people are dating and things are going well, and then they don't hold themselves back. They touch, the shomer nigal, which means is that they touch each other and they do whatever the other sins that they're doing, right? The second that you do that, you sort of block all connections, right? Your mind stops thinking. Women think from here, men think from other places. It gets in a completely different ballpark, right? You're not able to concentrate. You're not able to see. And sometimes people get into this relationship and they start. They're not careful with touching. Either they touch each other and they do other things. Their souls are not able to connect, and people could get married to the wrong person because they're not able to, as opposed to somebody who only thinks with their mind. They go on a date and they go on a few dates and they get to know each other. The thing over here, they think much clearer if they have other things that are coming into play and other things that are sort of pushing them. There's some people that get married and the second after they get married, they'll be like, oh man, what'd I just do? Only then it kicks into them. There are many people that they date for 7 years and they practically live together. They get married and then they get divorced shortly afterwards. They're like, I never knew this about her. Well, how do you not know about her? You lived with her for 7 years. And the answer is the Satan comes and he starts, the second that you give him an opening, he's going to burst through the door and he'll be like, I'm here. And he plots himself down and he's going to decide what's going to be happening. So the person has to be very careful with that.
What if the guy tells you he's spiritual?
Yeah, don't believe him. Very simple. The people that say,
But Shomer Shabbat, Shomer...
Oh, that's something else. There are many people that say,
spiritual.
People don't understand what spiritual means. People think spiritual means that you like having deep conversations.
Went to yeshiva and...
So they're religious. Yeah. You're looking for somebody who...
more modern.
So you're looking for...
necessarily would wear kippah every day.
Right, so he's not that spiritual. He thinks he's spiritual. So I'll explain to you what. Right, which is good, which is more important. Right, which is fine. Right. That's so you want to find somebody that's it's not necessarily, let's say there are different levels, and it's like, there's different levels of the person that you could end up, being together with also. There are different people that you could, end up marrying. Now, if, let's say somebody has, and I'm not necessarily if you're dating somebody and they're in like a similar situation, not going to be like, well, we're breaking up, you're not, spiritual enough for me. No, so
people are too rigid.
You have to know, right? So you have to, this is a rule for everything in life. You have to know how to say it, when to say it, and how to present it.
Like, what about the hair covering? Is that also?
That is one of the most important things for women. Yeah, for women, it's one of the most important things. I'll tell you like this: there's one woman that had tons of righteous children. Like I'm talking about like righteous, like the biggest rabbis righteous. And they asked her and be like, you're like 7 for 7, like all of them were like amazing. He's like, what do you do? How do you do that? And she said, it's because the walls of my house never saw my hair. That's how modest she was. She was very, very careful. The Mishnah Berurah says, with the Chafetz Chaim, he says in Hilchot of Tefillah, he says that the blessing in the home, money, happiness, things like that, come from the woman's modesty. Part of the hair is a woman's modesty. Well, covering here is from the Torah. From the Torah, right? It's covering the hair as part of the Torah. It's not something like, hey, the rabbis made it up. Here's a bonus.
What about red colored dress or?
So tzniut. Tzniut is something, like I think we spoke about this at one point. There are certain people, I remember now in the olden days, now I don't know how much it is, where they would wear these like jumpsuits, right? And the jumpsuits had like juicy written all in the wrong places, So in
Writing. I'm just talking about
so I'll explain it. So with that, so what happens is that you have these people. So what happens is when a guy walks down the road, there are certain colors that attract attention. Thank you. There are certain colors that attract attention more than others, right? And you could tell that, right? You could see that that if let's say there's a flashing light. You ever realize that why are you staring at that? You're like, what am I, a fly? Well, no, come on, you focus. You're driving and there's an ambulance in front of you and you can't stop, pull yourself back from flashing light. On the psychology of the people is there are certain things that attract attention to you. Now, the problem is if a woman dressed in like this bedazzled, bright pink, neon shiny thing, it's going to attract attention. Like, why is everyone looking at me? It's like because you're glowing in the night, That's why everyone's looking at you. What do you expect? The guy's eyes are going to attract the places. So the general rule of modesty is you could dress nice. By all means, dress nice. By all means, dress appropriately. But you can't do something that attracts a lot of attention. That's like bam out there. And that's why when they write all these letters in the certain places, like my face is up here, and be like I'm reading. Well not me. Not any non-Jewish men. Let's leave it like that. So, chas v'shalom. So, okay. So now it's good. A little bit understandable. Let's ask some questions. It's less of a. It's less. Focus on this. Focus on this is the basics, right? The basics which everyone has to. Below the knees, below the elbows, collarbone, and if you're married, cover your hair. Okay. And that's. I'm not saying everything else is allowed, right? But those are the priorities. Those are the basics, and those are everybody has to.
Should men also be tzniut?
Men generally do have a problem, but it's totally not different. Not like women.
They have to wear sleeves, right?
Yeah, they can wear shorts.
Men can wear.
They shouldn't wear shorts if they're coming, let's say, to learn Torah and they're coming to Bet Midrash, but they could wear shorts. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, you're not going to see a big rabbi in like shorts, or in capris, right? You're like, oh, the breeze is amazing. It's hot. They're not going to do that. You're not going to have that, right? Which also gives you an idea of where a person's holding, but shorts is okay, short sleeves is okay. Men don't have to cover their elbows and to cover their knees and things like that. I don't see why they wouldn't.
I heard that they have to wear sleeves. Like they can't wear sleeveless, especially when they're praying.
Praying, that's a different story. We're not talking about praying. Right. We're talking about just in general. Right, let's say some of the men are playing basketball, right? They should wear a shirt and pants and preferably sneakers, but I'm saying they don't have to run with the shorts, make sure it covers the knees, that type. But it's all right. So there was once a rabbi that two people came to him, a husband and a wife, and the husband's like, this woman is crazy. She's old. She does this all day. I can't deal with her. I need a divorce. So the first thing the rabbi does, okay, let's try to see if we can make peace. He brings in the woman. They sit down together, and after a few sessions, he's like, there's no hope. This thing is over, way over. And he says, fine. He says, you know what, fine, we'll make peace. We'll make a divorce by peace, I guess. So he says he'll write up a divorce. His assistant was standing next to him, and he writes up the bill of divorce, and he gives him the bill of divorce to the man. And he tells the man, he looks him in the eye, and he says, next time, keep your mouth shut. And the guy nods his head and walks out. So his assistant looks at him. This is a big rabbi. The assistant looks at him and says, he's like, why should he keep his mouth shut? The woman was here before. She's mentally imbalanced over here. It's not, there was something wrong with this woman. So he's like, what are you talking about? The opposite, you should have told her to keep her mouth shut. And he says, no. He says, there's something that you don't know. He says that there was once a very righteous person. And he went into heaven, but the one thing that he did, he learned Torah, he did everything excellent. But the one thing that had a little stained on his soul was he was married to somebody who was not really easy with him, right? It was very, in a very bad way. And so he never wanted to get divorced because he figures, listen, if I got married to her, there's a reason that I got married to her. If I have to get divorced, I have to come back again, deal with her again. Let's finish it with it once and for all. That was his mentality. And he says, so he stayed together with her, and she drove him crazy. But because of that, all his learning it's a little hard, right? You know what they say, happy wife, happy life, right? It's very true, right? So if you have a happy home, you can do everything a lot better.
Same thing with the husband.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, 100%. But there's a reason why we say that, because the husband now has to make the wife happy. But it's the other way around also. The wife has to make the husband happy also. Right? It's a two-way street. So they go 100%. So they go and they get into the next world, and it says, listen, everything is good, but all your Torah has a little blemish in it. You didn't do it like full happiness. You were like always like, oh, I gotta go home for this person again. You were never always happy. So they all said, listen, it wasn't his fault. The whole court over there in the heaven, they said, listen, it wasn't your fault. He says, and they said, okay, let him go to heaven. And finally, there was one angel that says, oh, wait. He says, what do you mean? He says, how are you going to let him go? He says, this guy, he says, if this was his test in life, then he should have passed it. What do you mean you're giving him excuses if he could have done it, if he could have not done it? He should have went, and he should have done everything happily because this was his test in life. So once they bring something up in heaven, it's not like, oh, just come on. You're a new guy, new angel, go away. Now, it doesn't work that way. They bring up a case, it has to be resolved. So they say, now they can't figure out. Be like, okay, now he has a good valid point. What are we going to do with this? So they decided they're going to take this angel, they're going to put him in a human body, and he is going to marry this woman. If he could serve God and he could do everything like he expects the other person to do it, then he's right, the other person gets punished. If he doesn't, then he has no say. So the angel agreed. They brought him down to this world, and he was the one who just came in and married this woman. I told him, I said, next time keep your mouth shut. I'm not talking about in this world. I'm talking about in the next world. He says, next time keep your mouth shut. So there was another interesting story with soulmates, that there was once somebody who had a very hard time with his wife, right? They didn't get along by any means, which way or form. And he comes to the rabbi and he says, I can't, it's driving me crazy. I can't deal with this anymore. Please, you got to help us. And the rabbi tries helping and nothing's working. So the rabbi says, listen, okay, I'm going to tell you something that you don't know. He says, in a previous life, he says, you did a lot of idol worship, right? By the way, these type of rabbis, as far as I know, don't exist anymore. I'd be like, hey, rabbi, where was I last life? And a few hundred years ago, we had a few of them. They're not a lot, even back then. It was very holy with the Baal Shem Tov, the Arizal. We had a very, it's a very, we'll soon see a story at the end, B'ezrat Hashem, of an unbelievable, we'll finish with that story, but of how a person was able to see, in the previous life. So he goes over to this, to this person, and the rabbi says, listen, in past life you did a lot of idol worship. So much so is that there's not going to be enough reincarnations to you to come back before Mashiach comes for you to fix it. Which means there's a certain time where people can fix things. Once Mashiach comes, it's like game over. There's no more, there's also no more, if let's say a convert is trying to convert, and he's thinking about it, he's not thinking about it, and then Mashiach comes, there's no conversion. That's it. Doors are locked. Of course now you want to come. We're the winning team. And everyone wants to join the winning team. If you do it before Mashiach comes, then you can do it. The same thing with Tshuva. Right, it's another topic with Mashiach. Maybe B'ezrat Hashem will do that also. So he says, you had so many times that you needed death penalty that there's not enough time for you to come back to this world and die for so many times. So what God said, God gave you in His mercy, He sent you a unbearable wife. Every time you feel like you just can't handle it anymore, just realize you died one time. Right? One thing got off your checklist. So he's like, really? He's like, wow, that, it's like, all right, that helps a lot. So meanwhile, he goes back home, and his wife starts getting on his nerves, and it starts escalating. And finally, he feels like he can't do it anymore, and he starts whispering into himself, one less death. One less death. And this happens, and he's calm. Usually they would fight back. He did one less death, and he was fine. He moved on. So finally, his wife, every time she starts screaming at him, she realizes he starts mumbling something in his mouth. He's like, what are you, what is this that you're doing? So what are you mumbling under your breath? So he says, he told him, listen, to be honest, I went to the rabbi, and the rabbi told me this, so I died one last time. Right? So the woman says, you think you can get out of hell for me? Absolutely not. No, but they're just opposite. She respected the rabbi. She says, if this is what the rabbi says, then I don't want to be a part of you, I don't want to be your kapara, And she ended up becoming a good wife. Right? And they both had the atonement on that. Sometimes, in life, people get married and it's rocky in the beginning, or rocky in the middle, and it's not always so smooth. It doesn't necessarily mean you got married to the wrong person, right? It's something you need to generally work it out. There's when a person gets reincarnated, there's a few things that a person can get reincarnated as, right? It could either start as an inanimate object, which I think we spoke about this at one point, like a rock, in the cement. So there could be something reincarnated stuck in here. right? And by the way, let me go first for all those things. There's one of them is an inanimate object. Second thing is a plant. A little fruit, a little tomato plant. There's going to be a soul that's stuck in there. The other thing is an animal, right? And then the final step is a human. And by the way, it's sometimes a person has to start in the beginning process, which means is just that you came to this world could have taken, many years. You had to process, you had to be in a rock, and then for a certain amount of time. And then you came into a plant, and then eventually you went into, it's a process. Not necessarily just automatically you come in. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. So there are certain, what I want to speak about is what sins do you have to come back. The Arizal says in Shara Gilgulim, certain sins that this is one of the big rabbis that were able to see everything. He was able to see, where you came from, what souls were everywhere. So he wrote a very, very heavy Kabbalistic book called the Shara Gilgulim. Speaks, literally the translation is Gates of Reincarnation. And he explains there, many ideas, which we took some things, and we left out some things that were heavy to deal with. And he spoke about certain sins that if you do, what you come back with. So I would like to read with you certain things of that, of what animals and what things you come back with. Okay, so an animal, some people that come back in an animal, and by the way, some of them are going to be doubles, you're going to see, because I characterize it not by the sin, but by the animal. Okay, so it depends. Only God is the one who decides which one for which. But sometimes you could be either this or this. So an animal, somebody who was alive in this world and died, and he had certain sins, he has to come back an animal for three sins. Either if he did idol worship, murder, or adultery. The three big ones that a person has to die and they come back as an animal. Who comes back as a dog? Somebody who eats unfit, non-kosher food, right? And there's a lot of verses that prove this, and I'm not going to go through that. I'll just basically tell you, but certain things I will tell you the verses. The verse for the dog is in Exodus chapter 22, verse 31. Which means is if you have unkosher food and that, throw it to the dogs, the Torah says. And if you realize that unkosher food, you throw it to the dogs. You messed it up last time, now you're going to get it again, right? And technically, it's also another reason is because they didn't bark when we left Egypt. But the idea is that could come back as a dog for eating non-kosher food.
Because they didn't bark.
The dogs didn't bark when the Jews left Egypt. Yeah.
They were supposed to.
Dogs generally bark the second that they see somebody walking past by. Have you ever walked near someone's garden and there's like a dog like 50 yards away and he's like starts running, he's like, and you almost have a heart attack from this big thing. Okay, so now the next thing is but you should know that the laws of slaughter, they're very particular, right? They're so particular for what purpose? So that the animals doesn't suffer when it gets killed. Right? There's sometimes there could be a soul in that animal, so it doesn't get suffer. They do it very, for specific, so it doesn't hurt. There's also you come back for a dog, says the Kavayasha in chapter 34. If you speak brazenly, chutzpah, you speak like you don't have any respect, and the person could come back for the dog. The secret for this is in the pasuk Yeshayahu chapter 56 verse 11. V'haklavim azay nefesh, and the dogs are of greedy dispositions. So let's move on. Another thing you come back for a dog is adultery. If somebody commits adultery, they come back as a dog. And the Kavayasha brings it down in the same chapter, and he says 9:15, right? We still have some time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, no, good. Please, you can come at 8 o'clock. Excellent. No. I just want to make sure that I have some time. Okay, good. Thank you. So somebody once went and there was a rabbi who by the name of Rabbi Avram ibn Pua. Right, and he was very wealthy. He used to do a lot of Torah mitzvot. He used to give a lot of charity, and he had another person in his in his neighborhood that they used to do business together. Now his wife, this rabbi's wife, used to run all the business. She was a very shrewd businesswoman, and she ran all the business. And one day, the person that she did a lot of business with got very sick. He got very sick, and his skin started decaying, and his skin started getting, and especially one particular area started getting worse than the others, and that was his general area starting to decay more than others. He spent tons and tons of money trying to find the cure, and nothing doing. Eventually, he went and he couldn't put the two and two together, and he passed away. He passed away from the terrible disease. Several years later, shows up in this rabbi's front porch, this like dog, but it's not like a regular dog, it's like a nasty big dog. And the people there, when they saw the dog's face, they're like, something's wrong with his face, like a person that's in this dog. You could tell, there was like something in his soul, so there's like a very weird situation. So, and this dog was very odd. Every morning, it was waiting in front of this rabbi's front porch, and every time he opened the door, the dog tried to move, to try to run in. And the rabbi had to go and chase it every time that he would wake up in the morning to go to shul. And eventually, what he used to do, it was like a daily thing. They didn't know what was going on with this. It was a very odd situation. So they had like a routine. The rabbi would go out, chase the dog, and the person behind him had to quickly close all the doors that the rabbi left out of. Right? And he had a nice house. Right? So one day, this was going on for a short while. One day, the rabbi walks out, and the person behind him forgot to lock the door, and the dog managed to run in. It ran in and it started going from room to room to room to room, looking for something. It found the wife, and it started biting her, and it started, barking at her, and it was doing very vicious things to her, and it ripped, dug straight through her skin, and they heard her screaming. They heard her screaming from. This is the time of the Arizal. They heard her screaming from the Arizal's house, which was a while away, which means she screamed really loudly. They came running, they chased the dog away, and they see what, they're like, okay, something's up with this. So they brought this to the Arizal, this big holy Kabbalist rabbi, and they said, what's going on with this? So the Arizal said, he says, this dog is a reincarnation of the person that died from that sickness that, that you used to do business with the other person. You and your wife, you did business that. The reason that he came back is that he and your wife were in an adulterous relationship. And he got punished. She seduced him, and now he got punished. He had to come back as a dog. And as revenge, he came back and he was trying to bite her and to get revenge for what she caused to all the suffering and the pain to come to him. And they brought this to the woman, and they made her swear, and she ended up admitting to it. And for the rest of obviously, he separated with her, the rabbi, and he pushed her away. She left her house, and for the rest of her life, she was in repentance. And it says that she died during her repentance, right? She didn't have, I don't know how much longer she had, but she was in repentance. So that's a dog. Come back as a fish. A fish, righteous people come back as a fish. That's why there's a secret that people eat on Shabbat fish, right? It's also, a fish doesn't need to get slaughtered. So the death is less painless than a slaughter. So the righteous people come back. If they have to come back, they come back as a fish, and it's very easy. It's not so painful. Rocks. People that come back in rocks is due to the sin of speech, which means rocks can't speak. If let's say somebody likes to gossip and say lashon hara, say lechilot, all these different types of sins of speech, they come back as rocks, right? And by the way, anything that comes back other than a human remembers its all previous life. It's not like, oh, I'm a rock. This is cool. I'll chill out over here. No, you remember all your previous life, and you're like in solitary thinking about all the things that you did. They say that's one of the most painful things.
Do humans remember some?
Some humans do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Some humans. What?
Like deja vu type of thing?
That also, yeah, we spoke about that. Oh, we have, yeah.
Because I always get deja vu.
So we'll have to send you. I didn't even post that class online, but B'ezrat Hashem, there's 2 classes prior to this that will answer those questions. We have to send you the.
Do a second dream class now, also like the angels and the. Like
Right. So we're gonna do. So we did that in BJX. We're gonna do that over here, B'ezrat Hashem, also from the beginning over here. So the next thing is a B. A community leader who goes and abuses people, lords people over themselves. He's a leader and he has the power, but he abuses it. He comes back as a B. A leaf is somebody who feeds improperly slaughtered meat to other people. Right? They come back as a leaf, which means he has non-kosher food that wasn't slaughtered properly, and he gives it. A leaf is very painful as the wind blows. Oh, why specifically? I don't know. But the reason that the leaf person has to get, it's very painful when the wind blows and the leaf moves for the soul.
Why is someone comes back as a leaf?
If they feed other people it's slaughtered meat that wasn't kosher, which means it wasn't good kosher. It wasn't a good kosher. People that come back as water. Water is considered a level of vegetation, right? Not like an enemy, like we spoke about, like rocks, but rather like the plant thing. So somebody who spills blood, they come back as a water, and there's proof of this for all these things. We're not going to go into that. Additionally, somebody who's not careful in washing the hands before they eat bread, right? Somebody who's not careful in washing hands before they eat bread, they're supposed to wash with water. They're going to come back with water. Into water. Somebody, and there's a Gemara in Sotah 4b that says that one who eats without washing his hands is uprooted from the world and is judged with water. This is the secret. If he's judged with water, means that he comes back with water. Also, somebody who doesn't make a blessing, right? You have this, you have to make a blessing. If you don't make the blessing, one of the things is that you come back in water. Also, additional is if you treat something without any respect, you steal from your father or your mother, or you befriend somebody who's very destructive, right? There's certain people that I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. Okay, so. The next thing is
you come back as water.
Water. Mm-hmm. Grinding stone. Grinding stone is also somebody who commits adultery, right? This comes back as a grinding stone, like you grind like grapes or things like that. So a bat. Somebody who had relations with an animal comes reincarnated in a bat. A female Gentile. Somebody who had relations with a woman while she's on her period, right? Comes back as a female Gentile. A female. Somebody who comes back as a girl. A homosexual man, somebody who he can be reincarnated in a woman. These type of people cannot have children because really he's a man's soul in a woman body. These people are barren unless there's certain things that a person can come back and fix it. I'm not saying that every woman that you see that she doesn't have any kids, you'll be like, man, haha. Don't say that at all. But it's a possibility, okay, that it could be like that, right? So you have to be very careful. Be like, oh, I know why you can't have any kids, sicko. You should not say that, right? You have to be very careful. Don't think about that ever, but you have to understand that it's possible a correlation. Again, this is all from the Arizal. Next is a male donkey. Somebody who was with a married woman could also come back as a male donkey. A female donkey is one who has relations with his mother, isn't a female donkey. A rabbit is also somebody who had homosexual relations, right? And it depends, there's certain types, but we're not going to get into that. A mule is somebody who had relations with his daughter-in-law or somebody who had relations with his sister-in-law. A Jewish prostitute, right? By the way, this is all from the Holy Kabbalist book. I'm not making it, this is all 100% from that. So he just took a few things. Jewish prostitute is somebody who has relations with a non-Jew, right? Comes back as a Jewish prostitute. So a camel is somebody who has relations with one stepmother. A stork is somebody who has relations with one sister. I don't know if you see, there's a lot of things with the relations. Sexual relations are a very big sin, right? You should really get to, that part should really click over here. Somebody who comes back as a white vulture. A white vulture, there's a certain bird, says the Kaviyasher in the 2nd chapter. He says that it sees very far, and it gets aroused by seeing. Somebody who is not careful in watching his eyes, especially for men, they come back as this type of bird. Since they weren't careful, they come back in that. Okay, so we're almost finished. And there is, I want a few. No, it doesn't say anything. I can only tell you only what it says exactly. It's a very, very. It's not like, oh, you're going to cruise. It's very painful for a human soul to be in an animal or anything else other than a human. It's just very, very painful. Woman. Now, yeah.
I'm sorry, so from this, do we learn that it's good to have pets or bad to have pets?
Generally, you should not have pets, but if you have pets, you don't have to kick them out. Dogs is also Dogs is generally not such a great pet to have, but if you have it, you don't have to get rid of it. If let's say you wanna, if you play with it and you wanna, let's say, pray, wash your hands beforehand, don't pray next to it and things like that. All I know is about dogs. I don't know about cats. In general, if you play with animals, you should wash your hands, right? So that's and you should not pray next to them. Which means if you pray in a certain room, make sure the animals are not, crawling all over you, rubbing for, they want a pet or something.
So when you have a pet, is it are you helping them to atone for their sins, or
not going to make a difference? They're going to deal with it.
Harming you?
Well,
Could they be harming you?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Yeah.
If someone comes back to this world because he, let's say, didn't eat kosher food, and he comes back as a dog, so how can he change it?
So it's a very good question. So there's no free will. They don't have they're not going to try to communicate, but I remember, they're not going to be able to try to be like, the dog is talking to me, I can tell for sure it's saying something. You're going to look crazy. But it's a punishment. It's sort of like a term sentence. And that's, after that usually he'll come back as a human and then he'll have more, so yeah. Okay, so let's finish up. There's a lot to speak about women, but let me tell you, generally, very briefly, women generally do not get reincarnated. Generally. Doesn't mean why. Because a woman has, when a person is able to go into hell, a person doesn't go into hell if he has Torah. Torah protects the person, right? Torah protects the person, so he can't go into hell, so now he has to come back in reincarnation, right? Women in the olden days didn't learn Torah. Right, nowadays it's very different. So I don't know what the situation nowadays, but in the old days they didn't have the Torah. Now, but now that you have the the Torah, it might be different. So generally, women have on a different level in the reincarnation.
What happened before? They just went to hell.
Yeah, they get cleansed in hell.
What? It's not fair.
Why not heaven?
So this is a question that's asked by the Rabbi Chaim Vital. Well, if they're good, depends on how they are. I mean, the hell is a dry cleaning. You're cleaning yourself. You're not, it's not like, oh, can't believe you did this to me. I don't even want to look at you. Go to hell. It doesn't work like that. It works. It's a cleaning. You're dirty. You're going to clean you, and then you could go into the nice ball party, right? Is that whatever the ball? Okay. So this is a good question. We'll answer that, and then we'll say one last story, and we'll finish with that. If the Rabbi Chaim Vital, which was a student of the Arizal, the big Kabbalist rabbi, he was says, what is it better, to come back in reincarnation, or to come back to this world again, or go to hell? So he said it depends on the person. If somebody was sinned a lot in his previous life, so what is he going to come back? He's going to come back, he's probably going to sin again. It's not worth it for him, because he's just going to bring more dirt upon more dirt upon more dirt upon himself. For that type of person, it's better for that person to go to hell. But if you have a chance, that means it's better for you to come back over here, so you don't have to go to hell. So if everybody who's sitting over here, that you're in this world and you're not wherever other places that you don't want to be, that means that you have a chance. Now, you should never say oh, well, it's too hard, it's not possible. No, because you're here means that you have a chance, right? You have the strength, you have the abilities to accomplish anything. Now, we'll finish with one story, and then we'll take any questions. There was once a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Aaron the Karliner. He passed away, and he had a very close student, Reb Shlomo, who was supposed to become the next rabbi. But the student said, listen, being a life as a rabbi, you have to be always involved with the community. You always have to talk to people. You can't sit and learn Torah. You always have to be involved. He says, listen, I'd rather just sit and learn Torah. He says, I don't really, and they kept the whole community said, listen, please become the rabbi. And the guy kept on declining. He says, try to find somebody else. Really, it's not, I'd rather just sit and learn. I learn 20 hours a day rather than, I prefer this. So they tried, they couldn't find anybody else. And they kept on going back to him and he kept on refusing. So the rabbi, his rabbi came to him in a dream. And he said, listen, he says, the community needs you. And he says, if you go and if you become the rabbi, you will get a gift. And your gift will be is that when you see a person, you'll see all its previous reincarnations. Right? So God will open your eyes and you'll see things that nobody else sees. So he says, that's an offer you can't refuse, So he says, fine, you got a deal. He becomes rabbi. He calls the next day and says, I'll become rabbi. That day, he starts seeing things. And the first case that came to him was a case of somebody who was very sick. And he had a lot of money. And they gave him with a fat donation. Says, hey, please, Rabbi, please pay for this. This person on his deathbed is not working good. So Rabbi looks at the name and he says, okay, fine. And he starts praying. Not a few minutes go by and there's another request that comes in. This time it's from a mother who was pregnant, and she was about to deliver a baby, but there was some sort of maybe breach or whatever. The problem was is that the baby wasn't coming out, and she was in a lot of pain, and she was stuck. And they told her, says, Rabbi, can you please pray that everything should go well for this pregnancy, and the baby should come out nice, safely, and healthy. So the rabbi says, sure. He looks at these two names, and he realizes with his new gift, he says, the soul of this man who is wealthy and sick, and is supposed to go into the soul of the baby. He says this one cannot go into this one until this one dies. They can't both simultaneously. So he'll be like, well, you know what, this is, how am I supposed to do that? What am I supposed to do? So he says, listen, it should be as it should be. And the person, died, and the baby was born right after that. Now he got this money. He says, it's not right that I keep the money. He says he gave it to the mother. The mother was a very poor woman. He says, listen, it's right, after all, it's his money. Right? It's a baby. The baby was this rich man. So he gave him the money, and they lived on it for a short while. And eventually, they, as the poor people in those days would travel from town to town. They would travel from town to town, and they would, go begging for certain things. Meanwhile, a few years go by, and this boy gets a little older. And they're traveling from town to town, and they just so happen to come back to the same town this rabbi was in. And at that particular day that they were there was a wedding for this rich man that passed away. He had a son that was getting which means his grandchild was getting married. And the son, the family had a lot of money, so they made a very, very lavish, big, huge wedding. And the way that it used to go there is they used to invite all the poor people to the wedding also, and they would give them a certain section. You can take as much food as you want. So basically the whole community was invited. So and it was in this this person's mansion. He had a very big house. So this poor woman walks in with her son. The son is really walking into his old house, and the second that he walks in, he was always a polite kid, very calm, and the second that he walks in, everything started changing. He walks in, he's like a little kid, he's like, bring me to the head table. Also speaking with confidence, and they're like, your mother's like, shh, please, you're going to be kicked out here, what are you talking about? He's like, no, bring us to the head table. He says, so they bring him some food, to quiet him down. And he says, what are you going to give me the second house? Give me the best steak that you have. And they're like, what's up with this? Here. They give him some money. He says, here, why don't you go and, here's the money and you could be on your way. So the kid looks at what they gave the mother money. He says, what, the copper? He says, go bring me the gold coins from the chest. And the guy's like, look, who's this kid? He's like, who do you think you are? You come into this thing. And the rabbi was sitting over there. And the rabbi saw it. And he saw that this kid was really this person. There were two people arguing, right? Which was this poor kid and the father of the chatan and the kala. And he didn't, this guy didn't know, but the rabbi's looking and it says, this is the guy's father. The guy's arguing with his own father. This guy's a poor person, and he's like, and they're fighting back and forth. So the rabbi was there, and the rabbi said, listen. He says, how do you kick your father out? He says, it's a wedding, entertain the kid. Entertain him, put him on the head table, don't worry about it. And the rabbi said, okay, the rabbi says that, fine, what are we supposed to do? So they bring they bring this little kid to the front, and they entertain him, and he's making demands like he owns a place, right? Finally, the rabbi leaves, and the rabbi kept on saying, it's okay, just leave him, it's a wedding, don't make a big deal out of it. Finally, the rabbi leaves, and then it started getting out of hand. It started getting out of hand, eventually that the son was like, look, the rabbi's not here to protect you anymore, you're out of here. He took his servants, and they threw the poor kid and his mother out. They literally threw him out. When the rabbi heard about this, and he said that his own son threw out his own father in a different reincarnation, he says, I don't want this gift anymore. He says, I can't. He says, I can't see this gift anymore. He says, and he prayed for that it should be taken away. There are many times in life where, you meet somebody. You don't know who that person could have been in a previous reincarnation. That person could have been, somebody that donated a kidney to your previous life, or who knows what. This is how careful we have to be nice to other people. We have to respect other people. You might look, different soul root. I don't have to deal with you. You're not on my same level. No, you have to. Every person that comes to you, it's very possible you were connected in a previous life. So much more so that who knows what it was. It could be your great grandparent. It could be your great grandparent that gave so much up for you, that they're coming back, and this is how you meet. So you have to be very, very careful. That is the idea of reincarnation, is that we're here for a purpose. We're here for a reason. We're not here just for some random, to have party and have fun for tomorrow you may die, whatever the saying goes, right? You're here for a reason, you're here for a purpose. And you know everybody else for a purpose also. The fact that you're all sitting here in the same room together is not coincidence. It's not just like somebody happened to see a sign and they came to this class. There's a reason that here. You're all very likely could have been connected in a previous life, right? And you all have a mission together, and the mission right now is learning Torah. So if you all have this purpose, and if you all have this mission, it's time, you have to think how nice you have to be to other people. How you have to treat people. You have to smile to somebody. You see somebody, oh man, this person again, right? It's incumbent upon us to think for a second. The last thing you want to do is get up to heaven and be like, you messed it up. That one thing that you needed to do, you messed it up, right? How much can a person kick themselves for that? Any questions?
Okay.
Yes.
I have 3 though.
Okay, well,
Okay.
You have notes? All right.
So
right.
first and foremost, you mentioned earlier that either like when there's a soul in a rock, plant, animal, and all those things, that it could either be that the soul's coming back to atone for their sins, or that's like the beginning journey of the soul.
Not if if a soul is the first time they come to this world, they come back as a human. They come originally as a human. The first time a soul is here, not only do they come back as a human, life is very easy for them.
So the only way you could be a soul could be in let's say a rock, plant, or animal could be is only for atoning sins.
Yes.
That's the only way to get
Yes.
there. Okay.
As far as my knowledge of it, yeah.
Oh, okay, so I missed it. And then another question is, what's the order of the soul? Like when souls are reincarnated or come back, is there an order to where they'll go? Like, do they first go in the same family line and then in the same community and then like?
Generally, yes, they can stay in the same family line, which means is that they'll, grandparents will come back as a grandchild, but not necessarily. Depending on, there's a lot of variables, and only God knows. And only God, depending on the sin, depending on that, depending on certain things. They could come to a different part of the world. Parents could be Israeli, they could be born in Australia, or Ethiopia. Who knows? It's not, you come back as a man doesn't mean that you come back as a woman. It's only God knows.
Cool.
That's it?
Thanks.
Any other questions? No questions? Hazak u'baruch. And I